Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. This is Season 2, Episode 2. This is our communication series.
Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Brian.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, as you've heard us say before, grab a coffee, grab a tea, get comfy and cozy, turn on those Christmas lights. We're so glad that you've joined us for our chat today.
In case you missed last week's episode, we talked about
communication styles.
And so we started the communication style conversation out of a place where we've had a lot of couples ask us, how do we communicate better?
Right.
That's cool.
We've asked ourselves that.
Yeah, we've asked ourselves that same question. And so we are going to take the next 4 weeks starting today with talking about the 4 different communication styles.
That's right.
And so the 4 styles are passive, passive-aggressive, aggressive, and assertive.
Yes.
And so really where you want to end up on that scale or in those communication styles is in the assertive place.
That's right. It's a healthy place.
It's a healthy place to be. And assertive isn't just bulldozing over everyone. No. There's actually a really healthy way to approach people in the assertive lifestyle.
That's right.
Or in the assertive communication style. So we really want to break down the 4 styles. But today we're starting with
passive.
And Natalie is a recovering passive communicator.
That's right. It's the communication style I am most comfortable with.
Why? Is that because that's kind of your style?
No, it's something, it's a learned style, right? Yeah. I learned how to communicate this way. And it, to make it simple, it's a pattern that I developed to avoid expressing my opinions, my thoughts, my feelings. I did not protect my rights because I didn't realize what even they were. And I could not identify what my needs were that needed to be met.
Right.
So as a result of that, it was ugly. And so being a passive communicator, I don't respond to hurtful or anger sort of situations that make me mad on the spot.
No, so, you're a processor. I need some time. Brian, leave me be. I need to talk. I need to process this out.
I'm processing in order to cope. I'm not processing in order to achieve an end result of resolution.
Right.
So my processing means that I stuff. And I stuff.
You did.
I did stuff. And sometimes I still try to revert. It still comes back that I revert to that default setting. I have gotten much better.
Absolutely,
but
you have.
Those grievances and annoyances that aren't dealt with, they just mount and mount and mount. And they build, and it could be weeks, days, months, years, whatever. And eventually, like a volcano, the top is blown off. And when that happens, it is not the trigger. We could have had what triggered me was garbage. Let's say you're not taking out the garbage. I guarantee you, if I'm going to blow my lid, it has nothing to do with the garbage. It's everything else leading up to that. Right? Stuff that I never even voiced. We talked earlier on about unmet expectations.
Yeah.
Because as a passive communicator, you should just anticipate what my needs are.
And I don't read between the lines very well.
And no one should anticipate what one's needs are. Right? We have to communicate with that.
And so you would compound
it's explosive.
It would build, and all of a sudden we would have this massive blowout, and the blowout never equaled the trigger.
It was totally disproportioned. Half the time I didn't even know what initially.
You were just so angry you couldn't think.
Just lost it.
Yeah.
0 to 60. And you never, it wasn't, where there was warning signs. It just, all of a sudden, I was at my max.
Right. Yeah. And after the outburst, when that would happen, would you feel any kind of shame or guilt? I mean, probably in the moment.
I felt great in the moment because I finally could release that. It's just the weight of how I did it.
Right.
Came after, and I really felt guilty.
Yeah. So
because I hurt you.
So it would compound. It would get big. I don't have any feelings. Remember this.
Right.
but it would compound, get big, you'd blow up.
Yep.
In the moment, you felt great, but then you would feel guilty, maybe even shame, and then because of the guilt and the shame and how you felt about it,
then I would recluse.
You would go back to being passive.
Yes.
So it was just a vicious cycle.
Oh, it's an awful cycle.
And I probably didn't help that cycle.
No, we'll get to that.
Wow. And so here's some things that happens with passive communicators, and they often do it this way: you'll fail to assert yourself.
Right.
So it's often the argument you see all over the internet where the husband asks the wife where they want to go for dinner.
Yep.
And then the wife says, "Oh, I'll go anywhere."
Right.
And the husband says, "Hey, let's go get tacos." And you're like, "No, I don't want tacos."
Right.
And then we're like, "Hey, let's go get a burger." "No, I don't want a burger." And you say, "Hey, I want to go get Chinese." "Oh, okay, I don't want Chinese."
Right.
Instead of just saying you really, really wanted to do like some kind of, you wanted Italian, you didn't just step up and assert yourself. You just...
No. And so, we've used the term like your spouse is not a doormat.
Right.
A passive communicator very much communicates that they are a doormat.
Right, because they're unwilling to communicate what their needs are.
That's right. They're not deliberate in asserting themselves in a healthy way. And because for whatever reason, they don't feel like their thoughts or opinions have value or worth.
Right. And so they fail to assert themselves. They allow others to deliberately or inadvertently infringe on their rights.
Yep.
Right?
And they apologize.
They apologize before they say the thing that might hurt the feelings of the other person.
And so there's a telltale sign of someone who's a passive communicator.
Right.
Hey, this is probably not a great idea, but I thought blah, 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 blah. Right? Where you're starting with an apology. Hey,
I know this is a bad idea, or I apologize for bringing this up.
Yeah. Hey, I don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
And I'm sorry, to bring this up, but could you maybe, right? And whatever it might be.
Yeah. So, and apologize and put yourself in that place of I'm already wrong before even asserting yourself.
That's right. Which then just fuels that whole thing of my opinions
don't matter.
Are crap and they don't matter. And so why even bother?
Yeah, right. And so they fail to assert themselves. They allow others to deliberately or inadvertently infringe on their rights. They tend to speak softly or start the conversation with "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And then they maybe they exhibit poor eye contact, or maybe they have a slumped body posture. I can tell you, thinking back to our discussions, that when you went into passive communication mode,
I couldn't look you in the eye.
You wouldn't look me in the eye, and you just sat like you were defeated, right?
Yes.
And I think if I think back, I was like, "Whoa, that was always like maybe I pushed too hard, or what happened?" Like especially if it blew up and I didn't know what was going on. I was like, "Okay, the way you wouldn't talk to me, you wouldn't look at me, you sat," and so
it's true. And there are many reasons why. Because being able to look your spouse or partner in the eye to communicate, "Hey, I feel feelings about that," whatever it might be. To be able to look you in the eye, is a vulnerable act.
Yeah.
And there's no way, right? Because we can't express ourselves or our feelings or our opinions because we feel like they don't hold weight or they matter. So why would I then be vulnerable with that when I know that it's not received? It's totally assuming the other person's position.
Right. Absolutely. Which we'll get to in a second. And some of the destruction or the impact of this particular style that happens for these people, if you happen to be a passive communicator, or maybe your spouse is a passive communicator, is oftentimes they feel anxious, or because everything around them seems out of control. Like
that's right.
Me not taking out the garbage was an indication that maybe something was out of control, even in your own heart or your own spirit. You're just like,
And I was always told, you're such a nervous child. I was always
probably didn't help.
Labeled nervous, and I was not realizing that it was actually anxiety.
Yeah.
About the situation, but I was always and it didn't matter what I did. There was always that sense of I'm out of control. And so then you hang on to the only thing you can have control over. And so at that point, it was what I said or how I said it. Yeah,
for sure. And even, so the destruction, they often feel anxious because life seems like it's out of their control.
Yep.
That sometimes they're depressed.
Feel stuck and hopeless.
Maybe just... Check.
Check.
Maybe they feel resentful, or maybe they're even necessarily unaware. You've heard the conversation where the
yeah.
Lord brought it up to you. He's like,
That's right. Yeah.
You were resenting me.
And my needs weren't being met. And again, like I, at that point, thought that they were getting met. Right? Some of them weren't, but not all of them.
Right.
And so it was confused because my own inner guidance system, I couldn't even trust my own feelings of how I was feeling about a situation, or even be able to, how do I even communicate how I'm feeling if I don't know what I'm feeling?
Right.
Right.
And if you're in that spiral where you've let it compound, you're not processing your feelings, you're not processing those emotions.
Right.
You're just circling the mountain and you're waiting for it to just all of a sudden blow up, and now it's a volcano.
Right.
Then you feel guilt, shame, resentment, go back down, or
yeah,
guilt and shame, confusion, go back, and then you're back into your passive thing, and you never can get out of it. And those feelings that we're talking about, you just stay there.
That's right.
So you just lived like that for years.
For years.
Right.
And I mean, and it was like that, not just with you, but it was like that in all communicating with anybody.
With any relationships,
was just passive, because I valued them so much that I was afraid to be abandoned.
Or to have a differing opinion in case they didn't like you?
That's right.
Is that
totally. And
really?
So it was just one of those things. It was a coping mechanism. And so we're not going to rock the boat by having our own feelings.
Right.
We're not going to rock the boat with someone that I really like.
Yeah.
Because out of fear that if I assert my actual opinion about something, you might leave.
Right.
Right? That's not healthy.
Yeah, absolutely not. And so you feel anxious, maybe you feel depressed because you feel stuck and hopeless. Yep. This is the destruction that can come, and the way they may feel because they ignore their own feelings.
That's right.
Right?
So can I ask you, because we've been married for 19 years and together for almost 22 years, would you say that, and one of the things that they say about passive communicators is that they are unable to mature because they can't ever get, the real issues are never addressed.
Right.
And on one hand, I agree, because you kind of stunt yourself. But on the flip side of that, I feel like you can learn how to communicate in a much healthier way. And for me, I needed professional help.
And that's what I was going to say. I think the turning point is there's a few things. Again, we always come back to you need a good community, and we have a really good community.
Right.
And we have good people around us. When we were up north, and we still have really great people around us. And we have good models of what good communication looks like. So that's something you need. You need community. A relationship with God is really important, is the number one thing for us. But the thing that I think that really, really, really changed is when you went and saw a counselor, and they were actually able just to, even in the first time you came out of there, they made sense of the way you're feeling. And then we took the Enneagram test, and that was also right around when I was starting to learn more about, I wish I would have done that test.
Yeah, that'll be an upcoming podcast.
That'll be absolutely an episode or 8. But I think what you've learned is you've become very emotionally intelligent with how you're feeling and how you process those feelings. Now, sometimes I'm a bull, and it's easy for you, instead of just standing up to me, and I love it when you go nose to nose with me.
Right.
I prefer that. That's my personality type. I don't want you to back off.
Right.
Sometimes you standing nose to nose makes me mad.
Right.
And then because of me, and I love that about you, and you're willing to go toe to toe, I'm willing to just give it back. And so, and oftentimes it's never in the really big, heavy, life-altering issues. It's like smaller things that we disagree on, like the Bible, or we disagree on a communication that we had, or but we're willing to go. So the way you communicate, you're very intelligent with your feelings now. Whereas before, you would immediately go into passive.
Right, and turtle. And
I actually had to peel back the layers of the shell to be able to finally get to the issue.
Right.
Whereas now you're like, hey, I need some time. You do it, then we talk about it. It gets heated, there's tears, or it's not. And you're like, you know what, you're right. What was it just a couple of days ago? You told me something, how you've been feeling about the way things were going in a certain area. And I immediately T-Rexed you and just bulldozed and went right over you and crushed your feelings, didn't even give you any place, made up excuses.
Yep.
And immediately, because I've matured and grown over the year, I realized how much of a jerk I was in that moment.
Right.
Because I T-Rexed you when you didn't need a T-Rex. You just needed you needed me to be assertive and say, you know what, you're right, and just take responsibility for my actions. And so but you asserted who you were.
Right. And it was not like, you have to understand when you're asserting yourself and asserting your opinions and thoughts, it should be done in a calm and healthy way, which in this particular instance it was.
Right.
Because
like I say, this particular instance,
there's a vulnerability that comes. Like, I have to be able to trust that information with you, that you're not going to take it and use it against me. And I think that right there is key for a passive communicator. Are my needs being heard?
And then you trust me with that information.
That's right. Or is it going to be used against me?
It's a good thing I got a short memory.
Right? And yeah, no kidding. And it was one of those things where we talked about it after the fact, because you had a meeting and I had a meeting. And so, whereas before it would have just been stuffed down. We
would have rolled the carpet back, swept it underneath, and then put the carpet over. That's and the carpet by that point would have been a mountain. We would have known what to do with it.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've definitely matured and grown in that. So you may read or study about passive communication. A lot of times they say, there's hope. We believe that a counselor is very helpful. If you need a counselor to help you change the way you communicate, man, there's so many great resources online. There's counselors out there that's their job to help you communicate better. But take the opportunity, and we're advocates of that. And so there's things that a passive communicator will say, like, or behave like. And so I say, I'm unable to stand up for the things that I believe are right.
Right, because
for them,
half the time we don't even know what that is.
Really?
Right, because we second guess ourselves, and we
see which,
like, what are my needs that I'm wanting to express,
which is the complete opposite of me. Whereas I don't second guess many of my decisions. I'm like, this is the next decision. All right, we're going for it.
Yeah.
Whereas you're thinking, all right, we're going this way, and then you're thinking of all the scenarios of what can go wrong. You're second guessing everything that we're doing. So
I get stepped on by everyone. I have said that. I don't even know how many times. I feel like everyone's like stepping on me and stepping over me, like that doormat scenario, right? People never consider my feelings, right? I am sure I have said that.
Well, maybe not exact way, but you said like, no one's thinking about me or how I feel about this.
Right, which just feeds that cycle of it doesn't matter what my feelings are, because no one cares about them anyway. And
like you said, I've been stepped on. I'm unable to take care of myself. No one thinks about my feelings in this.
That's right.
I want to stand up for my rights, but I don't think I can.
Right. And I would beat around the bush so many times in so many situations when you'd be like, just tell me, like, what is it that you're actually asking?
Right.
It'd be like, I thought I was clear. And you're like, you're not clear. You're like dancing around the issue. You're beating around the bush.
But that's also, and some of the responses that you're going to hear today on the podcast is because I'm very specifically an 8 on the Enneagram, and I'm more of an aggressive, now assertive, I believe, sometimes aggressive communication style. Yep. So you're getting the response that Natalie would have to her husband, who happens to be a challenger and is really good with that.
Right.
And so even...
This is a classic one I think we've used in our unmet expectations about taking out the trash. This is so funny. Whereas we, as passive communicators, would think to ourselves, I just wish he would take out the trash. Like, how hard is it to take out the trash? Like, he can't see.
And not say it out loud.
He can't. Oh, this is internal. He can't see that the trash bin is totally full. Like, doesn't he see all the things on the counter? Why can't he load the dishwasher? Instead of just saying, hey, hon, could you please just take the garbage out for me? Mm-hmm. So there's an assertive way of
which is what you do now. Hey, can you help me clean up the... Yeah, absolutely can.
Right? And instead of just wishfully thinking that you could anticipate what my needs were.
And I'm also very terrible, and my pastor says this to me all the time, Brian, you got to read between the lines. I am a black and white kind of guy.
You are.
And so if you say one thing like, hey, you say, I'm fine. I know you're not fine.
Right.
But you said you're fine, so I'm going to take you at face value that you're fine, which as a married man, that's not always the wisest decision.
Right.
Sometimes they want you to pry and figure out what's going on.
We hint a lot instead of just coming out and saying it.
Right.
And, even if you say it wrong, at least you're trying to assert yourself in a healthier way.
Absolutely.
Instead of just hinting at it subliminally.
and just hoping that it works out.
That's true.
And so what we want to do is we want to provide some ways that you can overcome, or you can conquer, or you can start working through passive communication style. And so the first one is stop doing what you think the other person wants.
Ooh.
Can you unpack that?
Well, I think no has been my favorite word of late. And
because you're a recovering
like
passive communicator.
Passive communicator and like people pleaser, because I would literally that statement, I would do what I thought you would want me to do, or I would say what I thought you'd want me to say.
Just to assuage the situation.
Yeah, like appease the situation and smooth it over.
Yeah.
So I think after getting some help on how to communicate better,
right.
Well, one, to just even understand my own things, my own baggage,
right.
my own shortcomings. How then can I communicate better?
Right.
So being able to say no, or to stand up for my boundaries, or to stand up for sort of acknowledging, hey, that was really passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I would never, ever challenge that before.
Right. And now you will.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes, I will.
When I say it like that, it sounds ominous. It's not as ominous as it, or is it?
No, but again, you've provided because you do want to talk things through. So,
which drives you bananas sometimes.
Right, but it helped to pull me out of that unhealthy way of just stuffing it and just, boo-hoo, woe is me.
Yeah.
Nobody cares anyways. Why bother? These are the things that I would say.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how I feel.
Yeah, I hate when you said that. That was
right?
the worst. I'm like, of course I care how you feel.
Right. Well, if you did, then you wouldn't just X, Y, and Z. Do you see how...
And you would attach my amount of love that I feel for you based on that one situation.
Yes.
If you really loved me, you wouldn't.
Right.
Well,
and so here's that hinting.
Or if you really loved me, the garbage would be out.
Right. So do you see how
I see
unhealthy...
how you manipulate me there.
Do you see how unhealthy that is? Okay, you say manipulate, I say unhealthy.
Whatever you want
to call it.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. So number one is stop doing what you think the other person wants. Right. Number two is notice behavior in others that is unclear or unsaid, which you actually addressed earlier.
I do now.
Yeah, when you're like, hey, I thought you started with something and you didn't finish, or you said this. Is that what you really meant?
That's right.
And it's with me, it's very much I say what I mean, right?
For the most part.
There's times when I'm trying to hide things from you intentionally, like date nights or things like this that you're always trying to. Hey, what did you really mean by this? And you won't leave it alone. And,
right, because I'm suspicious by nature, so you can't plan a surprise without me.
Yeah, she wanted to be
digging.
a forensic criminologist if she decided not to be married to me.
Yes, I did.
And so,
isn't marriage kind of like that?
Wow. You just compared how we communicate in our marriage to being a forensic criminologist.
We're investigating.
You're investigating. I don't know what's going on with you.
Notice behaviors in others that is unclear or unsaid.
Yeah.
And not be afraid to talk about that.
Right. And the third one is check out your assumption with the other person.
Yeah.
When you're getting into meetings or leadership or anything like that, a lot of times conversations with other people is based around
body language,
but an assumption. And they make assumptions in that conversation oftentimes. And sometimes they're projecting that assumption because that's what they want or that's what they feel they needed.
Right.
But when you're in a marriage, you want to check that as though if you're making an assumption about me, I appreciate when you're like, hey, this is what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Is this what you're meaning? You're like,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely that is. Or no, sorry, that came across funny. This is what I was really, yes, it was, but here's the other part that I was thinking. Or you're giving the opportunity to actually speak it through.
Right. And you're asking for clarity, and there's absolutely nothing unhealthy about asking for clarity.
No, ask for clarity. If you're not sure, ask for it.
In our communicating over the years, one of the things that you do that will just set me right off.
Oh, this is not planned in the notes.
Is the head. Oh, what is it? How do you describe that? You just like shake your head at me.
Oh, you.
So if I challenge you or I say something and then you just, get really defensive because either I've struck a nerve and I'm right, but the challenger in you is like, you will not be right.
I neither confirm nor deny said thing.
You shake your head like I can't. In other words, to say, it gives off the notion that you're saying, I cannot even believe that you would just said that.
Yeah.
And he's not even aware, and I think you can attest to this.
Sometimes
half the time you're not even aware that you do it. It's just so natural.
And other times I'm just doing it to poke the bear.
Oh my goodness.
Because I'm mad now.
So
I revert to being a child occasionally.
Before, as a passive communicator, that would just drive me bonkers. I literally would lose my mind.
And now
I call it out.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I saw
why
that
are you shaking your head?
Why are you shaking your head?
Yeah.
I saw you shake your head. Like, what is it? Like, are you disagreeing with what I said? Or are you just mad that I pointed out something that you need to work on? Which is it?
Right.
Which sometimes makes you mad because I
didn't want that truth pointed out to me in this very moment.
I think at that moment you're like, can you just please be passive?
Yeah, right. The truth sometimes is super inconvenient to the thing I have to do next.
That's right. Or, hey, I noticed you rolled your eyes. Like, are you upset with me? What's going on?
I'm not an eye roller.
No.
You are an eye roller.
I'm just a Jesus, my face in all aspects of that.
I know you say that, but it's not like you really sometimes struggle to keep that face.
Everything
all the
shows
rage
on
and
my
anger
face.
is showing.
Everything. If I'm disgusted, if I'm disappointed, if I'm nervous, anxious, happy, exhilarated, sad.
It's all in the eyes.
It's all in my face. And so there are times when I need to have a neutral face and I need like the Lord's help with neutralizing my face.
Keep my
the
face
saying
neutral.
you wear your heart on your sleeve? Well, it's all over my face.
It's not on her sleeve, it's on her face. And it shows. And she didn't have to say anything. It's just there.
That's right. When you say, and you said this to me in our like earlier years when we were younger, you'd say that I was acting like a baby. Quit acting like a baby.
Are you sure I would say that? That seems completely out of character
for you? No. So you would say like, quit acting like a baby, or why are you doing that? Like, that was real mature of you, right? Comments like that and things like that.
Super passive aggressive, wasn't it?
Oh, well, that was. But instead of me just losing my mind or stuffing it down on how I'm going to use this against you later.
In the memory bank it goes.
If you're saying something like that to your partner, being able to counter that with something like this. Hey, when you say I'm acting like a baby, are you trying to tell me that you don't like my decision? Or are you trying to tell me that you don't like the way that I'm responding?
Right.
To this? Or are you like, and I've even gone as far as like, are you trying to dismiss my feelings in this situation? And so because I don't respond the way that you would respond, now I'm acting like a baby?
Yeah. And
so
which is a really good point, that the way you brought that up, because
right.
Me and Natalie don't respond to our conflicts the same.
No.
And so what you said is very important. Oftentimes, it's much like our love languages. Mm-hmm. We speak to each other in our love language instead
right.
of the other's love language.
Yep.
We sometimes try and resolve conflict in the way that I would resolve conflict
right.
versus how you would resolve conflict.
That's right.
And so because you do that sometimes, and I know that I'm a bull and that I'm just going to bulldoze or I'm going to T-Rex right. or whatever you want to call it, I respond sometimes to you as opposed to being like, okay, look, I can't respond to her that way.
Right.
Because if I do, I'm going to hurt her feelings.
Right.
Not like our pastor Malachi, me and him will go toe to toe on different ideas because we're that way. Me and my sister will just disagree, and she thrives on it. I thrive on it. That's not how Natalie rolls.
No,
not at all.
And so you got to think, if you've got one unhealthy communication style, trying to resolve conflict in that style,
right.
trying to resolve conflict with another of the unhealthy communication styles, like you can imagine the conflict just there. I mean, how you can see just how it spirals out of control.
Absolutely.
And it will make more sense when we get to the aggressive one, because I'm passive and Brian's an aggressive, well,
I'm a recovering
aggressive communicator style, right? So the point of practicing those kinds of things, of being able to assert yourself by saying, hey, is this what you're meaning when you say this?
Right.
And if it's not, just like, you're acting like a baby, just stop being a baby. Well, then comes the conversation of,
I don't sound like that, by the way.
I feel demeaned when you say things like that.
Right. And sometimes the language has to get a bit stronger.
Right. And so I feel unappreciated, or just being able to express your thought
right.
and opinion about a situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it helps train you to just use healthier ways to express yourself.
Absolutely.
Without just sweeping it under the rug.
That's good.
Right.
And here's like, even as we move towards the final thoughts on this, like my final thought on this one is don't sweep things under the rug.
No.
Because all that happens is that pile that you keep sweeping gets bigger and bigger, and then the rug starts just not fitting the pile anymore, and then you have to start dealing with things.
That's right.
What are your final thoughts?
Well, just to clarify, here's the cycle. So passively communicating, our needs are unmet, and our needs continue to be unmet because we're not addressing them.
Right.
We're not expressing them.
Right.
So then that leads to more feelings of nervousness and anxiousness, which then makes us even more passive, right? And it's just this vicious cycle that's really difficult to get out of on your own.
Right. And that's when we say, if you need a counselor, see a counselor.
Yeah.
There's some really good marriage coaches out there to be able to help you do these things.
Yeah.
Mate, we appreciate you listening today. If you got something out of this, or if you want to add anything, or you have a comment, or you disagree even, we would love to hear from you. If we know that people are listening and you like this podcast, it means a lot. It means a lot to us that you're listening, that you share it, that you let people know about Amplified Marriage. We are just here to do our best to lay out some foundations and help people improve their marriage and make things better. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook if there is a topic or a question or anything that you want to say about the last podcast or this one that you disagree with or love to talk about. Please email us at amplifiedmarriage@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And as you've heard us say before, we believe that your marriage can be reset,
refreshed,
recharged,
and restored.
Thanks for listening.
Talk to you soon.